Discovery in the ruins. The Xantharian war fleet descended upon Earth's abandoned colony on Kepler 442b with practiced precision. Commander Vexthor had led hundreds of planetary invasions, and this one promised to be the simplest yet. Long-range scans showed no weapons systems, no defensive shields, and only one life signature in the entire settlement. The humans had clearly fled, leaving behind a single caretaker too stubborn or foolish to evacuate. All units, maintain formation, Vexthor commanded through his neural link. His exoskeleton hummed with power as the dropships pierced through the planet's atmosphere. Below them stretched what should have been a thriving human colony, dozens of residential towers, industrial complexes, and landing platforms. But something was wrong. The buildings were covered in green. Not the rust green of decay or the moss green of abandonment, but the vibrant emerald of living plants. Vines thicker than a Xantharian's torso wrapped around skyscrapers. Trees grew from windows like hair from a giant's head. Gardens bloomed on rooftops where defensive cannons should have been mounted. What kind of camouflage is this? Lieutenant Kazai muttered over the calm. Thermal scans are going crazy. There's so much plant life down there that we can barely distinguish the structures. Vexthor's tactical mind raced through possibilities. Biological warfare? Some kind of defensive organism? But the intelligence reports had been clear. Kepler 442b was a failed agricultural colony, abandoned 3 years ago when the crops wouldn't grow in the alien soil. The humans had given up and moved on. The dropships landed in what had once been the main plaza. Now it was a meadow filled with flowers that shouldn't exist on this world. Flowers from Earth, blooming impossibly in alien soil under an alien sun. Spread out. Locate the life signature, Vexthor ordered. His soldiers moved through the vegetation with weapons raised, their 4 eyes scanning for threats. They found none. Only beauty. Meeting the gardener. They found her in what had been the colony's central administration building. The structure's walls were now trellises supporting climbing roses, jasmine, and something purple that Vexthor's database couldn't identify. Inside, the floors had been torn up and replaced with rich, dark soil. Vegetables grew in organized rows where desks once stood. And in the center of it all, an old human woman knelt beside a seedling, her weathered hands gently pressing soil around its roots. Target acquired, Kazim reported, his weapon trained on the woman. She didn't look up. Didn't flinch. She simply continued her work, humming softly. Human. Vexthor's translator boomed. You are in violation of Xantharian territorial claims. This planet now belongs to the Imperium. Surrender immediately. The woman finished with her seedling, brushed the dirt from her hands, and slowly stood. She was ancient by human standards, her hair white as snow, her face carved with deep lines. But her eyes were clear and bright as she looked at the armored soldiers surrounding her. Territorial claims, she said, her voice soft but steady. You can't claim what you don't understand, dear. Vexthor's translator struggled with the word dear, a term of endearment his species had no equivalent for. I am Commander Vexthor of the Xantharian Imperium. State your name and purpose. Margaret Chen, she replied, wiping her hands on her apron. But everyone just called me Maggie. And my purpose? She gestured to the garden around them. Isn't it obvious? I'm growing things. This colony was abandoned. Our intelligence confirmed it. Abandoned by those who couldn't see what was possible, Maggie said, walking to a window where tomatoes hung heavy on the vine. They looked at this soil and saw failure. They tried to force Earth crops to grow using Earth methods. When it didn't work immediately, they gave up. And you stayed? Kazim asked, confused. Someone had to learn to listen, Maggie said simply. The impossible garden. Over the next hour, as his soldiers secured the perimeter, Vexthor found himself following the old woman through her impossible garden. She moved slowly, explaining things he didn't understand with patience that seemed infinite. The problem wasn't the soil, Maggie explained, showing him a handful of the dark earth. It was our approach. We kept trying to remake this planet into Earth. But this soil, it has its own chemistry, its own microbiome. Once I stopped fighting it and started listening to it, everything changed. Listening to soil? Dexthor couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. Not with ears, dear. With attention. With patience. With respect. She led him to a section where earth wheat grew alongside purple stalks of native grain. See how they grow together? The wheat's roots break up the dense soil, while the native plants provide nutrients the wheat needs. Symbiosis. Dexthor had conquered 17 worlds. He had seen wonders and horrors across the galaxy. But he had never seen someone create rather than destroy. Why, he finally asked. Why stay here alone for 3 years, doing this? Maggie paused, looking out over her garden with pride. Because giving up is easy. Because someone needed to prove it was possible. Because. She touched a flowering vine gently, because everything living wants to grow. It just needs someone to believe in it. The test. This is irrelevant, Kazim interrupted, his weapon still raised. Commander, we have orders to secure this planet for colonization. The human is in violation. Of what? Maggie turned to him. I'm growing food. Making the planet livable. Isn't that what your colonization would do anyway? Our methods are efficient, Dexthor said. We would strip the native ecosystem, sterilize the soil, and rebuild from scratch. Standard procedure. Maggie's face fell. You'd kill it all? Everything that's already here? It's necessary for proper colonization. The old woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to a large tree growing through what had been the building's roof. Its bark was silver, its leaves a deep blue, clearly native to Kepler 442b. Hanging from its branches were fruits that glowed faintly. This is a memory tree, Maggie said. That's what I call it, anyway. The native species here, the ones that died out thousands of years ago, they cultivated these trees. I found the last one, barely alive, and helped it recover. Now it's thriving. She picked one of the glowing fruits and held it out to Dexthor. Your species has excellent pattern recognition, correct? Much better than humans? Yes, Dexthor acknowledged, suspicious. Then eat this fruit. It won't harm you, I've tested it extensively. But it will show you something. Against protocol, against logic, Dexthor found himself taking the fruit. It was warm in his clawed hand, pulsing gently with bioluminescence. He brought it to his mandibles and bit down. The flavor exploded across his senses, but that wasn't what made him stagger. Images flooded his mind, not his memories, but older ones. Stored somehow in the tree's genetic code. He saw Kepler 442b as it had been millennia ago, cities of crystal and light, creatures of grace and intelligence, gardens that spanned continents. And he saw the end, the slow death as the planet's climate shifted. The desperate attempts to adapt. The final gardener, planting the last memory tree with hope that someday, someone would understand. When the vision faded, Dexthor found himself on his knees, his soldiers surrounding him in alarm. You see? Maggie said gently. This planet had a civilization once. They didn't conquer or dominate. They grew. They cultivated. They understood that strength isn't just about survival, it's about helping others survive too. The choice. Dexthor stood slowly, his worldview fundamentally shaken. In the vision, he had felt the ancient gardener's philosophy, that every world was not a resource to be extracted, but a partner to be understood. That patience was a form of power. That nurturing was a kind of strength. Commander, Kazim said urgently. High Command is requesting status report. What are our orders? Dexthor looked at Maggie, then at the garden surrounding them. At the impossible beauty she had created alone, with nothing but time and care and faith. At the proof that what his species considered efficiency might actually be waste. Tell High Command. He began, then paused. What could he say? That an old human had taught him more in an hour than a lifetime of conquest? That he suddenly understood why humans, despite their military weakness, kept surprising the galaxy? Tell them we need more time to assess the situation, he finally said. Maggie smiled. Would you like to learn how it's done? Real colonization, I mean. The kind that builds instead of destroys? Dexthor looked at his hands, designed for war, and wondered if they could learn gentleness. Yes, he said quietly. Teach us. The lesson begins. 3 months later, Kepler 442b looked very different. Dexthor's war fleet hadn't left, but it had transformed. Dropships that once carried weapons now transported soil samples. Soldiers trained in combat now knelt in gardens, their powerful hands learning the delicate art of pruning. And in the center of it all, Maggie Chen moved like a prophet among converts, teaching patience to a species bred for conquest. Gently, Lieutenant, Maggie said, watching Kazime work with a seedling. You're trying to force the roots into the soil. Let them find their own way. Your job is to support, not control. Kazime's 4 eyes blinked in frustration. His exoskeleton, designed to crush bunker walls, made him clumsy with fragile plants. This is inefficient, he grumbled, not for the first time. With our technology, we could have this entire planet producing crops in weeks. Producing, yes, Maggie agreed. But not sustaining. Quick solutions create long-term problems. You want a garden that feeds your people for generations? Then you need to build it properly. Dexthor watched from nearby, his own hands deep in rich soil. He was planting memory tree seeds. Maggie had shown him how to harvest them carefully, how to prepare the ground, how to whisper encouragement to the tiny lives taking root. It felt absurd. It felt profound. Commander, one of his soldiers approached. High Command has sent another inquiry. They want to know when we're proceeding with standard colonization protocols. They're concerned about the delay. Dexthor had been dreading this. He'd been sending vague reports, buying time, but eventually the Imperium would demand answers. They would want to know why a battle-tested commander had turned a war fleet into a farming operation. Tell them I'm conducting a comprehensive resource assessment, Dexthor said. That's not a lie. We're learning what this planet can truly provide. The soldier hesitated. Sir, there are rumors spreading through the fleet. Some are calling this weakness. Seeds of doubt. That night, Dexthor found Maggie in her quarters, the old administration office she'd converted into a living space. She was recording observations in her journal, her handwriting spidery but precise. We have a problem, Dexthor said without preamble. Maggie looked up, unsurprised. Your superiors want results. Yes. And my soldiers are divided. Half of them have embraced what you're teaching. But the other half. He paused. They think I've gone soft. That I've been contaminated by human philosophy. Have you? Maggie asked with a slight smile. Dexthor sat down heavily, his exoskeleton creaking. I don't know what I am anymore. 3 months ago, I knew my purpose: conquer, secure, move on. Now I spend my days learning about soil pH and pollination cycles. I've conquered 17 worlds, Maggie. 17. And none of them made me feel what I feel when I watch a seed I planted break through the earth. What do you feel? Hope, he admitted. And that terrifies me, because hope is a luxury soldiers can't afford. Maggie closed her journal. Let me tell you a story about Earth. About a time when humans were very much like your people, conquerors, destroyers, consumers. We spread across our planet taking everything, leaving deserts behind. We thought that was strength. What changed? We ran out of planet, Maggie said simply. We poisoned our own home and nearly destroyed ourselves. The survivors had to learn what I'm teaching you, that real strength isn't about how much you can take. It's about how much you can grow. But the Imperium will face the same choice eventually, Maggie interrupted. Every species does. You can keep consuming worlds until there's nothing left, or you can learn to cultivate them. To partner with them. to grow with them. The demonstration. The next morning, Vexthor called a full assembly in the main plaza. His entire command crew attended, along with Maggie. The division among his troops was obvious. Some stood near the gardens they'd been tending, while others clustered in military formation, their body language rigid with disapproval. "I know many of you question what we've been doing here," Vexthor began. "You signed up for conquest, not agriculture. You expected glory, not gardening. So today, I'm going to show you exactly what we've accomplished." He activated a holographic display. 3 months ago, this planet's soil could barely support native scrub brush. Earth crops died within days. Now observe. The hologram showed detailed scans of the transformed colony. Soil quality had improved by 347%. Biodiversity had increased exponentially. Water retention had tripled. And the crop yields, even from these early plantings, were projected to exceed anything they'd seen on occupied worlds. "This isn't just farming," Vexthor continued. "This is terraforming done right. Maggie Chen has taught us how to work with a planet instead of against it. The result? In 6 months, we could have a fully sustainable colony here that would feed itself indefinitely. No supply chains. No resource depletion. No environmental collapse." He paused, letting that sink in. "Compare that to our standard methods. Strip the ecosystem, 3 months. Install artificial growing systems, 2 months. Achieve sustainability, never. Every occupied world requires constant resource input from the Imperium. They're drains on our civilization, not assets." Kazim, who had been skeptical from the start, suddenly stood straighter. "Commander, are you saying this method is more efficient?" "Vastly more efficient," Vexthor confirmed. "And I haven't even mentioned the strategic advantages. Worlds colonized this way don't rebel. They don't require military occupation. They don't breed resentment. Because we're not conquerors, we're cultivators." The assembled soldiers began murmuring among themselves. Vexthor could see the shift happening, warriors reconsidering what strength meant. "But there's more," Vexthor said. He gestured to Maggie. "Show them the gift." Maggie stepped forward, holding a small case. Inside were seeds from the memory trees, now carefully cross-pollinated with Earth species. "These seeds carry genetic information," she explained. "Not just about plants, but about cooperation between species. The ancient civilization here understood something your Imperium is still learning, that survival isn't about dominating others. It's about creating systems where everyone thrives." She opened the case, letting the faintly glowing seeds catch the light. "I'm giving these to you freely. Take them to other worlds. Learn to listen to those worlds the way you've learned to listen to this one. And in return, share what you learn with others." "Why?" one soldier asked. "Why help us? Humans and Xantharians have been enemies for decades." "Because enemies are just partners who haven't found common ground yet," Maggie said. "And because I'm old, and I won't live to see every world healed." "But you will. Your generation will." Vexthor watched his soldiers' faces. He saw understanding dawning. Saw the warrior mindset beginning to crack, revealing something softer but no less powerful underneath. "This is the choice," he said quietly. "We can report to High Command that this planet is ready for standard colonization. They'll send colony ships, strip the ecosystem, and turn Kepler 442b into another resource extraction site. Or, Kazim prompted. Or we tell them the truth. That we've discovered a better way. That one human woman has taught an entire war fleet how to build instead of destroy. And we let the chips fall where they may." The transmission. That evening, Vexthor composed his report to High Command. Maggie sat nearby, watching him struggle with words. "How do I explain this?" he asked. "How do I make them understand that what seems like weakness is actually strength?" "You don't explain," Maggie said. "You show them. Send samples. Send data. Send soldiers who've experienced the transformation. Let the evidence speak. Vexthor thought about the memory tree fruit, about the vision it had shown him. They'll think I've been compromised. You have been, Maggie said with a smile. Compromised by hope. By possibility. By the dangerous idea that there might be a better way. He included everything in his report, the soil data, the crop projections, the cultural observations, the strategic advantages. And at the end, he added his personal testimony, I have commanded soldiers for 30 years. I thought I understood strength. An old human woman has taught me I understood nothing. Whatever judgment High Command renders, I will accept. But I will not pretend that I have not been changed. That I have not seen a better path forward. He sent the transmission and waited. The verdict. The response came 3 days later. Not a text transmission, but a ship, a massive dreadnought carrying High Admiral Zekthar herself. Vexthor's career flashed before his eyes. Court-martial. Disgrace. Possibly execution for dereliction of duty. The High Admiral descended with an honor guard, her presence commanding immediate respect. She was ancient by Xantharian standards, scarred from 100 battles, her exoskeleton decorated with honors from 3 wars. She looked at the gardens. At the soldiers tending plants. At Maggie Chen, who stood calmly at Vexthor's side. Explain, was all she said. So they did. For 3 hours, Vexthor presented his findings. Maggie demonstrated the techniques. Soldiers testified to the transformation they'd experienced. And through it all, the High Admiral listened in silence. Finally, she spoke, show me these memory trees. They led her to the grove where the original tree had been joined by dozens of saplings. The High Admiral stood before them, and Maggie offered her one of the glowing fruits. It will show you the truth of this place, Maggie said gently. If you're brave enough to see it. The High Admiral ate the fruit. The new path. When the vision faded, the High Admiral stood silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, softer, thoughtful. I have commanded fleets for 50 years, she said. I have seen conquest from every angle. And I have watched our empire grow larger while growing weaker. More worlds under our control, yet more resources needed to maintain them. More subjects, yet more rebellions. More territory, yet less security. She turned to face her honor guard. Because we have been approaching colonization wrong. We have been creating dependencies instead of partnerships. Taking instead of cultivating. The High Admiral looked at Maggie. Human, you have taught us something our species has forgotten, that creation requires patience. That strength can be gentle. That the most enduring victories are those where everyone wins. She turned to Vexthor. Commander, effective immediately, you are promoted to High Commander and given authority to establish a new division, the Cultivation Corps. You will train soldiers in these methods and deploy them across the Imperium. Every world we occupy will be given the choice, continue under current management, or transition to cultivation methods. Vexthor couldn't believe what he was hearing. High Admiral, the other commanders will resist. Let them, she said firmly. They will change or be replaced. The Imperium's survival depends on adapting. This old woman has shown us the path. Now we must have the courage to walk it. The seeds spread. 6 months later, Kepler 442b had become a training center. Soldiers from across the Imperium came to learn what Vexthor's fleet had discovered. They arrived expecting weakness and left carrying seeds, both literal and philosophical. Maggie watched them come and go, teaching each group with the same patience she'd shown the first soldiers. She was frailier now, her health declining, but her spirit remained strong. You've started something that will outlive you, Vexthor told her one evening as they walked through the gardens. That's the point of planting seeds, dear, Maggie said with a tired smile. You don't do it for yourself. You do it for those who come after. The Imperium wants to honor you. They're proposing a formal title, First Gardener of the Cultivation Corps. Maggie laughed softly. I'm just a farmer who refused to give up on stubborn soil. But if it helps more people learn to grow things, I'll accept. The legacy. Maggie Chin died peacefully in her sleep 3 months later, surrounded by the gardens she had created. Her funeral was attended by representatives from 17 worlds, including human diplomats shocked to discover that one of their forgotten colonists had inadvertently changed the course of galactic history. They buried her beneath the original memory tree, and Vex Thor personally planted a sapling over her grave. It would grow from her body, incorporating her organic matter into its structure, making her literally part of the garden she had loved. At the memorial service, the High Admiral spoke. Maggie Chin taught us that the strongest beings in the universe are not those who can destroy, but those who can create. That the most powerful act is not conquest, but cultivation. That the greatest legacy we can leave is not territory claimed, but seeds planted. She held up a memory tree seed, its bioluminescence pulsing gently. We are sending these seeds to every world in the Imperium, along with teachers trained in Maggie's methods. In 1 generation, we will transform from an empire of extraction to a civilization of cultivation. And it will be because one human woman refused to give up on alien soil. The garden grows. 5 years later, the transformation was undeniable. 47 worlds had transitioned to cultivation methods. Rebellion rates had dropped by 73%. Resource efficiency had increased by 421%. And across the Imperium, soldiers were learning to plant instead of destroy, to nurture instead of dominate, to grow instead of take. Vex Thor, now High Commander of a division that rivaled the traditional military in size, stood in the gardens of Kepler 442b on the anniversary of Maggie's death. The colony had grown into a thriving city, but one where nature and civilization existed in harmony. Buildings and gardens intertwined, technology and biology partnering. Kazim, now his second-in-command, stood beside him. Commander, the newest class of Cultivation Corps graduates is ready for deployment. 200 soldiers trained in 23 different ecological systems. Good, Vex Thor said. Send them out. Let them plant more gardens. He touched the bark of Maggie's tree, feeling the pulse of life within it. Somewhere in that genetic code were her molecules, her atoms, continuing to nourish and support. She had become part of the garden literally and metaphorically. Do you think she knew? Kazim asked. That she would change everything? I think she just wanted to see things grow, Vex Thor replied. The rest happened because she refused to give up. Because she had faith that life wants to flourish, it just needs someone to believe in it. A transport ship descended, carrying the newest group of trainees. They would spend 6 months here, learning to listen to soil, to partner with ecosystems, to cultivate rather than conquer. And then they would spread across the stars, carrying seeds and knowledge and the revolutionary idea that strength could be gentle. Vex Thor watched them disembark, young soldiers expecting glory and finding purpose instead. Welcome to the garden, he said, the same words Maggie had said to him that first day. Let me teach you how to grow. And in that moment, looking at faces eager to learn creation instead of destruction, Vex Thor understood Maggie's final lesson, that the most powerful weapon in the universe wasn't a bomb or a gun or a fleet of warships. It was a seed, planted with hope, tended with patience, and given time to grow into something beautiful. The garden of Kepler 442b stretched toward the horizon, a living testament to what one human woman had understood, that real strength isn't about how much you can take from the universe. It's about how much you can help it grow. The end. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to HFY Codex Archives for more tales of humanity's place among the stars. Comment below with your thoughts, and remember, sometimes the bravest act is choosing to plant a seed instead of throwing a punch. Until next time, keep looking to the stars and believing in the power of patience.